This is the dark and gloomy lecture for Valentine's Day. Hello, Valentine's Day. Celebrating the martyrdom of Saint Valentine, an Egyptian saint who was killed by the Romans for refusing to recant his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He has since become, in some circles, the patron saint of marriage, and somehow the patron saint of Hallmark cards, because Valentine's Day, the day of love, I guess. So we just heard Die Wacht am Rhein, the Watch on the Rhine, which is the unofficial German anthem during the Wars of Reunification and really up through World War I. Where does this come from? Well, Napoleon seized the entire west bank of the Rhine and added it to France during his empire. So this is German territory west of the Rhine, and yet the French occupy it and call it France. So one of the things that unifies Germans against the French is that the Rhineland is now under French dominion. And to free the Rhineland becomes a national cause, unifying people from the Memel border with Lithuania all the way to the border with France, the traditional border on the Rhine. From Prussia to Bavaria, from Baden to Mecklenburg, Germans of all kinds believe that their ancestral homeland, the territory west of the Rhine, has become lost. And when the Russian army marches towards Eastern Europe and the Germans and Austrians throw off the French chains and fight alongside the Russians against Napoleon, Die Wacht am Rhein, the Watch on the Rhine, is a theme. So this anthem is developed after the fact to talk about how the river will never again be French, or the Rhineland will never again be French. Now, that is not the official anthem of Germany. The official anthem is written by Franz Liszt, the great composer. And it's Germany, Germany over all, Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, which I will play the old version of now. So, what that second was, again, written by the composer Franz Liszt, Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, in der Welt, is the national anthem of Germany. However, with all of the history that has been made since German unification, there are certain things that need to be clarified. The first two verses, particularly the first verse, Germany, Germany over all in the world, is suppressed in modern Germany. They don't sing it. There was a poor devil in Hawaii for an international competition, and there was a singer hired to sing national anthems when the German team arrived. And this American starts singing the first verse, and the Germans in the audience try shouting him down with the third. The first verse is demarking Germany. The Memel River divided the old German realm of East Prussia from Lithuania, which was under Russian dominion. The Belt River is somewhere in the south. Actually, it's in Austria. The Meuse River is in the Rhineland, and there's a fourth river up here in Denmark. And so it is a hyper-nationalist anthem that talks about territory. After World War II, the Germans don't like doing that, for obvious reasons. So the third verse, not the verse about German wine and German women, that's sort of, second verse baked in. Third verse, which talks about freedom, brotherhood, and loyalty, that is what is used as the only German national anthem pretty much since World War II. And since German unification, that has been not just West Germany, but all of Germany. So, Germany is like Italy, part of the old Holy Roman Empire. And it's the legacy of that empire, which Voltaire famously quoted as being neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, which is what leads to Germany and Italy and the center of Europe in general being a disorganized mess. Remember, before Napoleon, there were over 100 different different political entities in what is today Germany. And this is actually not today Germany. This is Germany unifying up to 1914. Napoleon reorganizes Germany so that it's a couple of dozen states. And it is that reorganization that the Germans keep even after Napoleon's defeat. Why? Because it makes sense. It makes travel and living in and governing this realm in North Central Europe easier. So much of the Napoleonic restructuring is kept. Now, as with Italy, the legacy of the Middle Ages and the Holy Roman Empire lives on. So I've included here the Austro-Hungarian Empire as a single unit, but it's not. Here's Austria. Down here is Italy under Austrian rule. Here are the Czech lands. Here are the Slovak lands. Here is Polish Galicia. Polish Galicia is Polish. The city of Krakow is there. Auschwitz is there. And I'm not even including Hungary, Romania, and the other areas under partially or totally under Austrian rule. So you got the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which includes Germans to the south and Germans in the region of the mountains bordering the Czech lands. You've got the Germans controlling Posen, West Prussia, and East Prussia, which, except for East Prussia, have been part of Poland, is now part of Germany, or part of Prussia. You've got Silesia, which used to be Austrian, which is now part of Prussia. Brandenburg, which used to be independent and is now part of Prussia, and the capital city of Berlin. But the Prussians not only control this eastern area, this area east of the Elbe River, which is about here, but Prussia also includes a Rhineland territory. So the Prussians have territory near the French, the Luxembourgers, the Belgians, and the Dutch. Austria is by far the most powerful German realm. But Prussia is the most powerful purely, or almost purely German realm. Yeah, there are some Poles, but for the most part, it's a majority German ethno-state. It's a nation-state, or close to it. However, in South Germany, you've got the major German powers of Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, actually, but I didn't feel like writing that. And these realms dominate South Germany, and they traditionally have a very close relationship with the French. The French at this time also control Alsace and Lorraine, which is area, the Rhine River, I should put the rivers on here at some point, I will. The Rhine River flows here, and then north of that area is the German Rhineland. So the French have a strong relationship with Baden and Bavaria. And in the center of Germany, you've got Saxony, Hesse, Darmstadt, Mecklenburg, a few free cities, and the Danish border is down here, the southern border of Holstein. It's a quilt, a multi-faceted quilt. It is confusing, it is annoying, and the Germans want a nation. They see what the French did with a nation. Even the Russians, who the Germans consider to be backward, have an empire dominated by great Russians. The Germans want a nation. They believe that history has not only glorified them, but shorted them by not allowing them to unify at the time that the English and French were unifying, the Spanish were unifying. So the Germans not only weren't unified, but they didn't get a chance to build a great overseas empire. So German nationalists want to unify the cultural region of Germany into a single nation. However, there are two ways of doing it. Großdeutschland und Kleindeutschland. Groß means greater in German. It doesn't mean disgusting. It's not like somebody in English, ooh, that's gross. No, in German, that's greater. Kleine, Klein means lesser. One of my girlfriends in high school's last name was Klein, so her last name was Little in German. Um, if you know anyone named Klein, I don't know if we have anyone here. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. But that name would mean little. So, which Germany will we have? Große Deutschland or Kleine Deutschland?
Große Deutschland.
Well, here's the thing. Großdeutschland includes Austria. And it includes all the Germans in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So, if you include a Großdeutschland model, and again, feel free to move if the video thing is in your way, you have a problem. Because the Austrians have, for almost half a millennium, been dominated by one royal house, the House of Habsburg. Remember the Habsburg Lip, remember Charles V and his son Philip II. Those are all Habsburgs. Well, the Habsburgs at this point are still ruling from Vienna in Austria. And the great project of the Habsburgs is something called the March Eastward, Drang nach Osten. And this march eastward includes going east and south into the Balkan Peninsula. So the Austrians have included in their empire Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Hungarians, Slovenes. Did I say Croats?
Yeah.
Croats. Serbs, a few. Serbs. And Italians. If you have a Großdeutschland Germany, a greater Germany, what about them? Well, it seems like Austria would have to give up its empire. But the House of Habsburg has been building this empire for hundreds of years. So the Großdeutschland model has a bigger Germany, but it also has the problem, what do you do with the non-Germans that Austria rules? Also, Austria is ruled by Catholics. The House of Habsburg is Roman Catholic. Southern Germany tends to be Roman Catholic. Luther's reforms weren't accepted in Austria, nor were they accepted much in Baden or Bavaria. Southern Germany tends to be separated from the north by a religious divide. So are we going to have the Habsburgs rule over Greater Germany? Are we going to have Catholics rule over Lutherans? So there is a different approach, Kleine Deutschland Germany. And what Kleine Deutschland Germany is Germany without Austria. So it's Germany that includes everything else, but not the Austrians, because the Austrians come with the Habsburgs, the Catholicism, and with all those non-German nationalities. And the whole point of having a German nation state is to have German people and a German culture in this German nation state. As such, what do we do? So these are the two competing models, Großdeutschland and Kleine Deutschland. Now, there is a precedent in North Germany called the Zollverein. The Zollverein is a customs union, basically a free trade zone. The Zollverein is set up so that people can trade from East Prussia to the Rhineland without having to go through this hassle. Let's say I've got hops that I grow on my farm in East Prussia, and those hops are really special. And I want those hops to become beer. And I want those hops to become beer, let's say over here near Polsberg or whatever, somewhere in Western Germany. So I load up a wagon load of hops, and I start riding. Now, going through Prussia, since East Prussia is part of Prussia, I've got no problems until I reach the borders of the lesser German states. Then, at the border, I've got to have my paperwork, I've got to get the cart inspected, I've got to pay for the stamp that gives me permission to go into this little German state. And then I cross the German state, and a few miles later, there's another border, and I've got to go through the same thing over and over and over again. And by the time my hops get to their destination, I probably have been through 6 or 7 national borders. The reason that this is a problem is it slows me down, it costs me money, and what if the local officials are corrupt? I have to bribe them. That costs me more money. What if they find something? What if somebody decides, we don't want your hops here in our area, so I have to go around, or maybe they confiscate it, maybe they seize it. It just slows trade down. Now, in biology, there's something called hardening the arteries, hardening of the arteries. Hardening of the arteries makes it more difficult for blood to flow within the human body. So, by the way, does cholesterol in the blood, in the arteries and veins, in the circulatory system. All of this is the equivalent of cholesterol or hardened arteries in the flow of trade. So the Zollverein is set up throughout Prussia and the northern states, the areas north of the Main River, so that you can have better trade. And throughout Western history, anyway, throughout European and American history, free trade can lead to political alliance, might even lead to political union. It's a first step. Remember this when we talk about the rise of the European Union at the end of the year. So the Zollverein is set up to smooth trade in northern Germany. But Zollverein isn't even a proper Klein-Deutschland model because it doesn't include the Catholic South Germans. It certainly doesn't include the Austrians. So the Zollverein has some pull, some attractiveness. Now, I've already played for you Die Wache am Rhein and the German national anthem. Like the Germans or not, you should at least have some notion of the emotional power. Look, my Irish ancestors came to America with a chip on their shoulder and with something to prove. Because in Ireland, unless you were Protestant Irish or partial English extraction, you were never going to be successful. You were an occupied people. This is back when Ireland was part of the British Empire. So coming to the United States for the first time in centuries, Irishmen do not have the boot of London and its government on their necks. So Irishmen work very hard to become very successful here in the United States, which many do. The Germans, who are a proud people, believe that this division has held them back and that this is their time to shine. They are going to unify somehow. It's going to happen some way. And when that happens, what amazing things the Germans will do. The scary thing is they're right. A lot of amazing, horrible things, and a few wonderful things happen as a result of this. The first attempt to make this happen happens in 1848 with the Frankfurt Diet. Remember, Frankfurt, right about here, in the center of old Germany. And Frankfurt is the medieval capital of Germany. It's where the Hohenstaufen Holy Roman Emperors reigned 1,000 years ago. So, in Frankfurt, Congress is set up from all over Germany of liberal politicians, in imitation of the American Continental Congress, in imitation of the original National Assembly in the French Revolution, without the crazy radicalism. The goal is to set up a constitutional monarchy, and I told you this story, but I'm reminding you of it. So in 1848, the possibility of a liberal Germany coming together through democratic parliamentary means is happening. But they need a royal family to front it. They don't want to be seen as a bunch of Jacobins. So they, no, we're not using the Habsburgs. They'll never go along with it. They're Catholics, and they are notoriously difficult to deal with. Well, there's the House of Wittelsbach that rules Bavaria. But Bavaria is just southern German. No, we've got to have the Prussians. And that means we've got to have the Prussian king. And that means we've got to have King Friedrich Wilhelm. So, it's going to be a tough sell, but a delegation from the Frankfurt Diet goes to Berlin and appeals to Friedrich Wilhelm to become emperor of a unified Germany, constitutional monarchy, with a strong parliament, the Frankfurt Diet. And this is where Friedrich Wilhelm Hohenzollern, which is the royal house of Prussia, famously says, "I will not accept a crown from the gutter," and slams the door in their faces, effectively dooming the Frankfurt Diet to failure. So this attempt to create a liberal Germany comes close, but I can't imagine any scenario where the King of Prussia would go along with it. And without the King of Prussia, it's dicey. You need the Habsburgs or the Hohenzollerns, and neither of them are liable to go for it. So, 10 or 15 years go by. Friedrich Wilhelm dies, and there's a new king, but he's old. The new king, who's old, is King Wilhelm I of the House of Hohenzollern. Wilhelm is tired when he becomes king. He is not a young man. He is not a vigorous man. He wants things to be quiet, and he wants to be left alone. And the parliament in Prussia is getting uppity. They're beginning to demand that he account for his military spending, that he limit spending on the army. Remember, the army is Prussia. Prussia is the army. Prussia is the modern Sparta. Prussia starts out as the Teutonic Knights who rule East Prussia, and ultimately they rule the Baltic region for a while. Then they divide into a few knightly orders, the Livonians, and then the Prussians marry into the Hohenzollern family and take over this huge area. Prussia's sandy, marshy, it doesn't have resources. The only resources that the Prussians have are its men and its army. The great elector, Frederick, and his son, Frederick the Great, make Prussia's army even better. They develop the goose step, which I'll show you more about in a future lesson, and they make of Prussia's army a first-rate power. Prussia doesn't have a navy, it doesn't have an empire, it doesn't even control all of Germany, but damn, you do not want to fight the Prussian army in the field. They are good at battle. And now the parliament in Berlin wants to limit military spending and make the king accountable. And the king says, no, I don't want to deal with this. You know what I need? I need an intermediary. I need someone to be a go-between between these chattering politicians and my royal office. I need a chancellor, a prime minister. I need a chancellor or a prime minister with guts who can handle things. I know who it should be. Oh, God. But he's a disaster. He's a Junker. Now, Junker is a word you should know. Junker. Junker. Write it down. A Junker, Junker, is a Prussian aristocrat. A Prussian aristocrat. A Prussian aristocrat. I'll go on, but just remember Prussian aristocrat. That should give it to you. East of the Elbe, most of this area is plantations, big ones. The original Junkers were Teutonic Knights who ruled over the Prus and the other Slavic peoples of this area. When these Polish regions become German, the Junkers ruled them. It's not like the old Southerners in the United States ruled over their black slaves, but it is a lot like the Norman Knights ruled over the Anglo-Saxons after the Norman conquest. The Junkers consider themselves a people apart. They consider themselves conquerors. And they are notoriously stiff-necked, hardcore, but they make up the heart of the Prussian army. Bismarck is a reactionary Junker politician. His idea of diplomacy involves some form of violence or intimidation always. And he's loud. Oh, God, he's got a temper. So the old king, Wilhelm, he wants an intermediary, somebody to control the politicians so that he doesn't have to. But he's afraid of hiring Bismarck because Bismarck is a pain in the neck. But in the end, he decides, I need Bismarck. I hate it, but I need it. By the way, old King Wilhelm's son, Frederick, hates Bismarck. He thinks Bismarck's a knob. He thinks Bismarck's a jerk. Now, Crown Prince Frederick is married to Queen Victoria's eldest daughter, Princess Victoria. So the old king is getting ready to hire Bismarck to be a go-between. The old king's son, Prince Frederick, is married to an English princess who believes that women have opinions too that are just as valid and that liberalism is the way to go and all this sort of British constitutional monarchy stuff that irritates the hell out of the Junkers. But the old king hires Bismarck, much to the chagrin of the crown prince and his English wife. And in the opening speech, Bismarck famously says, "Not through speeches and majority decisions will the great questions of the day be decided, but by iron and blood, Eisen und Blut." This is translated into blood and iron, which is synonymous with Otto von Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck is called the Iron Chancellor. And soon, anyone who wants to deal with the Prussian king, including his son, has to first go through Bismarck. Bismarck is going to stand at the door between anyone and the old king of Prussia. The old king of Prussia will have some peace and quiet, but the old king of Prussia will also have to deal with Bismarck. We'll continue next time. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.